Hi, my name is Ron Northcutt, and I'm the Head of Developer Relations at Appsmith. And today we're going to talk about not only how easy it is to integrate AI into your applications, but also specifically how you can improve the results of that AI integration using contextual data and other strategies. So today, as part of the Appsmith work event, we're going to dive in and take a look. Let's get into it. The first thing we need to talk about is the fact that AI is not intelligent. AI actually is just an LLM. And you may have heard that. That stands for Large Language Model. Basically, what it's doing is it's guessing the next word or phrase or sentence that is appropriate based on the prompt that you gave it and whatever training data that it has available. Now, this is super powerful, lots of great things you can do here, but it does make the results relatively inconsistent, especially from one session to another, because there can be variations in how it's guessing. And without feedback, without information, one guess can be really good, one guess could be really bad, and a third guess could just be completely hallucinating with false information left and right. However, there's a very easy way to actually improve the results without having to spend a whole lot of time or energy, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to talk about how to do an AI integration with Appsmith. It's so easy. I only need one slide and about 30 seconds to get into it. Then we're going to talk about some of the strategies for improving the results from AI. We're not going to demonstrate all of them. In fact, we're only going to look at the fastest and best ways to get there. And then we're going to take a look at an actual demo and show some examples of what this looks like in practice. Finally, we'll take a look at some different use cases to spur some ideas on how you can start to use AI inside your Appsmith apps right now, today, and get better results than you could otherwise. Sounds good? Let's jump in. Now, from an Appsmith perspective, AI is just another data source. You pass a request to this data source and you retrieve the results back. And we have some integrations out of the box. So Anthropic, Google, OpenAI. We also have Appsmith AI, which is available on the commercial edition. But if we don't have the integration for a source you're looking for, you can always just use the generic API integration to tie in and push and pull the results that you need. So nice and simple, nice and easy. We don't even have to dig in any further than that. Okay, so we've got an app. We're integrating with AI. How do we get better results? What are some of the strategies that we can use? Now, as I pointed out, when you're using Appsmith, integrating your apps with AI, that's not the hard part. The hard part is actually getting consistent and valid results as you use it over time. And this becomes more important, especially when you talk about internal tools where you might need to generate very similar or very exact results over and over and over again for different users trying to do the similar things. So there's a number of strategies you can use. We're not going to go into detail on all of them, but I want to outline what some of those look like so that as we start talking about it, you understand that there's places we can go from here. So going from very simple to very complex, here's a quick list. Number one is prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is when you spend time to generate and craft the specific prompt that you're sending into AI to get better results. Now, as you'll see with the way that we do things with our AI integrations, you can actually add a prompt that is very scoped and very specific to what you're trying to do with whatever information the user is passing through, which leads to number two, and that's contextual data. Contextual data is the data or information that you're passing through with your prompt to the AI. That can be things like the conversation, that can be things like cutting and pasting a CSV or a document or text that you want to take a look at or include. That could be something like a file, which is an example of what we're actually going to show today. A third option is what's called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. This is a little more involved because you have to set up a vector database and you have to take data, parse it properly, feed it into that vector database. And then when you make your request, you have to actually query that database first, pull back specific information that it thinks is relevant, and then pass that as contextual data. Now, this is going to get you usually more granular, more specific results than just contextual data alone, but it does require a little bit more effort. Number four would be fine tuning. That's going to be taking an LLM, whether it's an open source or a commercial model, and fine tuning the results with queries that you're passing through, showing it good examples, giving it some more information. That does take a little bit more time and energy, but you don't have to start from scratch, so it's great. And then, of course, the most complex solution is to build and train your own model. Really, really expensive, probably going to take a lot of time, and you're going to need a ton of data to do so. So that's usually out of the scope for most use cases. Now, if we take a look at these, I've got this broken down with some rough ideas of cost, effort, difficulty, pros and cons. I'm not going to go through all the specifics here. The important thing to notice is those first two options, prompt engineering and contextual data, are going to be the fastest and easiest ways to improve the results of your AI integration. And those are the ones we're going to be talking about in more detail in the next section. RAG and fine tuning, super valuable. They do require more time and energy, require some setup, and then some computing time if you're doing the fine tuning. And then, of course, the model training, that's what can get very, very expensive, take a long time, and requires a ton of data. Definitely, if you need to do it, you will know. If you don't need to do it, you might want to try and avoid that. So, the fastest way to get the best results that you can do today, we've already talked about, that's going to be a combination of the prompt engineering and specifically the contextual data. And contextual data is actually kind of the secret sauce, and it takes you way further than prompt engineering can do alone because it provides information about this specific request that AI is going to prioritize over all of the other training data that it has. So that's going to help you really narrow in the focus of what those results look like. So in this case, what we're talking about is collecting data into typically one or more files. In our case, we're going to be generating a PDF, but you can do that any number of ways. Ideally, this is going to be very clean data. You want to remove as much of the extraneous stuff as possible. We'll see an example here in a moment. And then we're going to attach this data to the query request when we send it over. And that's basically it. At that point, we've pretty much done everything we need to do. And this is why this is something that you can do right now, today, to get amazing results, much, much better without a whole lot of extra work. And we're going to do this all right now. So what are we talking about? In this case, what we've done is we've created a very simple chatbot that uses AI to answer questions. See it all the time in all kinds of different ways. The difference is that one of these is just going to be asking the questions with a generic AI integration using Appsmith AI. The other one is going to be exactly the same, except we're going to pass through some data. And in this case, we're going to pass through the entire data from our documentation site, docs.appsmith.com. And that's going to become the contextual data where all the answers are going to come from. And the results we're going to get from the generic chatbot are going to be decent. The results we're going to get from the one with the contextual data are going to be worlds better. And we're going to see that in real time. So to do this, we've got Appsmith AI because we're using the commercial version. We also have a community template that we're using from the community portal that provides the chatbot itself. So I didn't even have to write any code for that. And then I've created a very simple data tool that allows you to extract data from an RSS feed or a sitemap. You probably won't need this in all cases, but in our case, where we're extracting from our documentation site, we need that. Now, don't worry, all of these resources are listed at the end of the video, including a tutorial on our portal, so you can all figure it out, find out what you need, and go reproduce this yourself, like today. So don't worry, we'll get to that at the end. Okay, let's jump in and let's take a look at the demo. So the first piece we're going to do is we're going to use this tool I created to generate the content that we need. And in this case, we're going to crawl our documentation site. We're going to extract the data. We're going to clean it, remove everything unnecessary. We're going to format it, and we're going to put it into a single file. And we're going to do this all very, very quickly. Now, this is an open source tool, so anyone can grab it, use it, change it, modify it, do whatever you like. And so this is kind of what it looks like. In this case, I'm using this tool to go and hit this sitemap. And this is where we're going to crawl to get access to all of the content on the doc site. We're going to be only pulling out a part of each page. In this case, it's going to be the main content part. We're going to be creating an output file called appsmithdocs.pdf. And we're going to format this in Markdown. We could format it in JSON or we could format it in text. In this case, I'm going to use Markdown because that's something that AI tends to understand. You'll notice here it's not taking very long. We're talking about seconds to do this. And the results, if we want to fast forward another 5 seconds, is seen in something like this. So here we actually have each page from the sitemap. You can see it's in markdown format. It's got information, text, it's got code samples, it's got tables broken down, and all of this is easily available for us to put together. And in those, 20 to 30 seconds it took to generate this, we generated an almost 2,000 page PDF, clean and ready to go with all of my data. How incredibly simple is that? Okay, so now let's take a look. This is basically just a clone of that community template with really no changes. So let's ask a couple questions and see what it can do for me. If I'm setting up Appsmith, I might have questions about how do I set up SSO? Now, one problem with this question, it doesn't know I'm talking about Appsmith. So we're going to see the results are going to be decent, but they're going to be very generic and probably not very useful for me. Yeah, you can see here it's giving me some decent information, but it's not specific to Appsmith at all. What about how can I create a custom widget? We're going to see the same thing. It doesn't necessarily know what the context is. It doesn't have any information. So in all of the information it possibly has, it's going to try and tell us what we're doing. And in this case, it doesn't really know. It's giving me some help. It's doing the best it can, but poor thing, it just doesn't know what it's trying to do. So how can we make that better? Now, here we have an exact copy of that same community template, but we've made a small change. Let's take a look at this. Now, when I go in here, what we'll see is we have the same data source. In this case, it's just using Appsmith AI. The difference is that we've uploaded this file that we created, that appsmithdocs.pdf, and it's not very big. Now, the cool thing is that we can actually attach a number of different files. So we could attach a file with code samples. We could attach a file with knowledge base articles or blog posts or tutorials. We could attach a file with, code snippets and coding standards to use. We could attach a file with pretty much anything we want. But when we go in and make use of this particular data source and we create our query, this is where the magic happens. Now remember, I have not changed anything here from the other app. The only change is I'm now attaching this file. Now we do have a prompt, and it's a pretty decent one. And this prompt is actually doing contextual data as well. In this case, it's passing through the prompt, the question that the user has asked, which is coming from this text widget. It's also passing through the chat history that's being built up over time. And that is something that, OpenAI or ChatGPT or one of those is going to do by default. It's building up that history. So when you keep asking questions, it remembers what it's already talked to you about, at least for some amount of time until you get too big of a history. And that's going to feed back in. So we're doing the same thing. Now, I could go in and say, here is a new support query from an Appsmith user and the history of your chat. Like I could work with this prompt to make it much, much better. And that's something that should be done. But in this case, I'm trying to show the difference that you can get when you just add this file. And again, without making any other changes here, let's go ahead and take a look at the same questions and the results that we get from them. Okay, so here's that app we've deployed. How do I set up SSO? And now when this passes through, remember, it's not just sending through the question to Appsmith AI, it's also sending that PDF, which contains our entire documentation site. And so you can see it already knows the context is Appsmith. It's pulling out really great information on how to set this up step by step for SAML, for OIDC, how to test. This is great. This is coming directly from our documentation site, and it's really helping us. How do I create a custom widget? One of my favorite things to do. I love making custom widgets. It's so easy, and it's pretty fun to do as well. And what does the chat think now? Okay, great. Look, so Drop a custom widget, edit the source, add your code. If you need external libraries, here's how you do it. Add additional functionality, preview. And in fact, it's even giving me a link to our doc site for that exact page right there. Now, that's not something you're going to get without actually having the information pass through as part of the contextual data. Super, super powerful. So you can see the results before and after, and here's a different version that I had taken a screenshot earlier. You can see that the results before and after are much, much better. And when we start talking about how you can use this in your own use case, what I really like to do is try and use both good prompt engineering as well as contextual data. And both of those are really easy to do. They don't take a lot of time. They're going to give you the best results. So for prompt engineering, be very clear in your directions to the AI and go through and test and see what type of directions give you the most consistent results. You can also provide limits on scope, and that's like in terms of what you want it to do. Like only use information from the attached PDF to generate the response. I'm very, very tight on the scope. Tell it exactly kind of what results or what output you want, what format you want it in, exactly what you're looking for in terms of how many words, how big, what format, should it be in a table, should it be in JSON, etc. And test it a few times and refine it over time and see what you can do to make it even better. From there, you can attach contextual data. Now, this could be files like we've shown in this demo, and that could be files coming from anything. Docs, it could be parameters, guidelines, exports, emails, coding samples, writing samples, whatever it may be. But it can also be inline data from relevant sources. In our case, you saw that we were passing through the chat history as inline data, but that could be other things from within the app. It could be data in the table that's being displayed or in the list that's coming through. You could actually even select data by the user. The user could select, one or more items and pass those through and not even give a prompt. And you can get very, very specific on those things. So one of the things that's really great about this is that we can go beyond just a chatbot. We can actually integrate AI into all of these different places. So here's a quick list I came up with of some of the things that you might consider doing. I can't go through all of these, but you could do things like provide guidelines for any type of application or form approval. A job application, looking at, does this person match the requirements? A loan application, do they have the right, credit score and other items that tell you whether or not they're going to likely be a good loan, or anything you're submitting in. If you're talking about responses for customer inquiries, a great thing that you could do is, instead of just creating a chatbot, you could integrate with your customer support ticketing system and not only pull up a response and tell you what's a summary of this particular issue, but also ask the AI to give me the best next response. Do I need to ask more questions? Do I need more information? Using the documentation and the guidelines that we have, what's the best response that I can give? Are there responses that response templates that I can pass through as well? Makes it really, really easy to get that consistent experience, and it's very, very fast. If you think about the time it takes to review a full issue and all the responses back and forth, AI can do that in seconds, and that can save your customer support person more time so they can focus on doing exactly what they need to do to take care of the issue. Code review samples, compliance requirements. If you're looking at passing through the results of work that's been done on projects, looking at timelines, expense reimbursement based off of the reimbursement guidelines, generating a newsletter from recent blog posts or other content that's gone out, passing through past RFPs and providing information and data on your products, and then feeding in a CSV of an RS or documentation for a doc for an RFP, and having it generate the responses for you. I mean, the list goes on, and there's no end to what you can do with this. So, final thoughts. I know we've covered a lot of information very, very quickly, but hopefully you've seen, number one, integrating AI into Appsmith apps is ridiculously simple. It's just a data source. That's all it is. Of all of the strategies we've talked about, the fastest and best way to get the best results is going to be combining prompt engineering with contextual data that you can pass through, either data as files or data coming from the app itself or from something the user is providing. We will talk about some other things in future videos, so keep your eyes open for that. We saw an example of how this works in the real world right now today inside of our demo. And we talked about just some ideas for some use cases where you might start to look for where you could integrate AI into your Appsmith apps today. As I said, here is a list for all of the resources that we have. It's a QR code for a tutorial. It's got a link to that open source tool we use for generating that PDF from our documentation site. It's got a link to that chatbot community template that you can copy and paste and go to town with and have fun. Full directions, step by step. So don't worry about trying to pause the video and go back and forth. All the stuff's written down. And then remember, in my example, I'm using Appsmith AI because it's part of the commercial edition. It's super easy and it does a lot for us. But you could really integrate with any AI tool out there and get the same types of results you're looking for and the same type of improvements by passing through that contextual data with really good prompts. Hopefully, throughout all of this, you've seen that adding AI integrations into your Appsmith apps is incredibly simple. It's very easy, something you can do without a whole lot of work or effort. And hopefully that gives you some inspiration for how you can take your Appsmith apps, you can integrate AI at very specific places, improve both the quality of the responses you're getting and the power that you're providing with your apps, and take it to the next level. Thanks so much. We'll see you around.